Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to already the 15th episode of Demystifying S4HANA. Great to have you back, listeners, and an interesting topic today. Continuing on the last one, the colors.
Indeed, Faisal. So
Go
ahead. I think we are now getting into the habit, and all of a sudden we totally forgot to present ourselves in case you listen in the first time.
Introducing ourselves. But yeah, my name is Faisal, if you don't know yet, SAP consultant at PwC.
And I'm Thorsten Hübsch. I'm the partner at PwC, leading the SAP practice here in Belgium, but also the European Center of Excellence for Sub-Strategy. Hey, Faisal.
Hello. Yeah, indeed, a forgotten habit. But continuing on last week, I've asked you a question about the current market trends.
Yeah.
And then we noticed that actually customers are more tempted to go towards a brownfield approach. Let's maybe deep dive into this one for today.
Yes, indeed. Brownfield approach, just to recall what it actually means.
Good idea.
It means simply a technical upgrade of your existing SAP ECC system. So you are using in SAP ECC Enhancement Pack 0 to 8, and you basically run migration tools from SAP in order to upgrade that. So what could possibly go wrong? A lot of things. So Brownfield, as you already mentioned, is probably the most likely or the most common migration approach, and everything independent what you do, whether green, brown, or blue, you should always start with a so-called SAP S4HANA readiness check. Why is that? Because this will determine also a lot whether you, in which direction to go, which migration approach to go. And if this readiness check turns out that there are, let's say, a lot of elements that you like to keep, there are few things you want to change. You have also from the business few requests, heavy requests, which completely would change your SAP setting. You also say, listen, actually, we don't want to completely dismantle the system and have less data in the system. If you say, I'm happy with the data, more or less, I need to do a cleanup that you can do easily in an S4HANA Brownfield, then the Brownfield is actually the way to go. So from that perspective, if your main motivation is you want to go to a new version, and you're still strategically okay with your system setup, you don't get too many complaints, go for the Brownfield. And so that maybe just as a starting point for which type of clients, for which type of, let's say, starting positions, the Brownfield is the right thing to do.
Also, you've mentioned the parameters last time. Maybe we can deep dive into them because, of course, as a customer, I would like to know in terms of timeline, costs, why to consider this migration approach.
Yeah. So I mentioned last time, I think if I'm not mistaken, I mentioned criteria number one is the risk, and very, very often. And the Brownfield is by far the less and least risky one. Because you basically stay with the system that you have. A lot of migration tooling is quite proven, and in the meantime very mature. So that's definitely something where you have a lot of advantages in a Brownfield. You also mentioned costs, and it's also the least expensive, by far the least expensive way to go to S4HANA. And then your timeline, low cost means also it will not take that long. So from that perspective, also in terms of timeline, Brownfield is definitely the one which is lowest in terms of time consumption.
Good. That's why they probably always choose the brownfield for now.
Yeah, so good question. What's the problem then with brownfield? Why is not everyone doing it?
Let's go to the cons.
Exactly. Let's go a bit on the cons, because what you actually do is the best thing is, I sometimes say a bit as a joke, the best thing that can happen, everything works as bad as before. This is the best case. And this, I think, also summarizing it very well. If you look at it from a positive sense, you have little added value when you go into a brownfield. What you basically get is you get the latest version of S4HANA. You are safe going forward. You provide an innovation platform, but the brownfield itself will not grant you a lot of advantages, and from a business perspective. It's in a very good case, the customer doesn't, or the business, the end user doesn't notice anything, and then paying a number of millions, also taking some risks. Some CIOs put their head on the table, as we sometimes say. And then, if then the best case is that actually the customer should not notice anything, that's of course also not very compelling, and that's a bit the downside of the brownfield. It's more a technical exercise, but also not only. Very often the brownfields are run in a way that business is promised they don't have to do anything, which is absolutely wrong. So this is one of the big misunderstandings. You have a number of elements that change in a mandatory way and require business involvement, but also change at the business side. Maybe just to give you a couple of examples. You will definitely, so if you're not yet running on new GL, you have to move to new GL, new general ledger. And this is a different way of accounting within the SAP system. It already existed in SAP ECC, and that's always the problem when you call something new and it becomes old. You still call it new. So the new general ledger was introduced 2006 already. So almost
quite some time ago.
Indeed, almost 20 years ago. But some customers still use the classic GL, which is the predecessor. But with S4, you are mandatory. You have to go to a new GL. So if you haven't done that yet, this requires quite some business involvement. Yeah. The next big thing is the introduction of the business partners. Also, this is something which can hardly be done without the involvement of business. So we see, and these are only two examples. I'm not going yet into the details of the functionality which simply will not exist in S4 anymore. And for these, you have to do basically a redesign for certain elements. And here I come back to the beginning of the session. S4HANA readiness check will tell you exactly these areas. Do you use functionality which doesn't exist in S4 and hence requires a redesign? And with the redesign comes business involvement. You need to know how the business wants this functionality. And so also here you see no brownfield is as brown as it can get. It is always a bit of green in there. And literally in the last 10 years, I have seen maybe a handful brownfield conversions, which really were just a system upgrade without the need of doing any redesign of solutions or of functionality that has disappeared.
Yeah, these SAP tools are not undervalued. Yeah? These readiness check, we did it a couple of times already, and I think it's very valuable to.
It's very valuable, and good that you mentioned it. Then maybe let's just give a short overview. It's actually enough to speak a whole session about it, but just a short overview. What do you get? You get basically an overview. How big is your system, and what kind of system sizing do you need to expect under S4HANA? The system size decreases when you go to S4. Question is how much, and the readiness check will give you an indication on that. But also it will tell you which custom code, which so-called set code you are using, which kind of interfaces you are using. You're also getting an overview which data quality, how your data quality is looking like. Do you have a lot of inconsistencies in the data? So this is really a great insight. And as you mentioned, we have done that many times already, also helped the customer to interpret the results and then take the right decision going forward. Indeed.
Thanks for clarifying to the listeners, Torsten. In terms of, apart from the readiness check, we already did some projects as well for different clients. What would you say using this brownfield method is very challenging for the clients?
Very good question. Because the answer to that will show that we are actually going in completely different ball games depending on which kind of transformation approach you are choosing. And the biggest challenge in a brownfield is that you basically get every transformation activity in the time span of a weekend. No? So actually, the project looks as follows. You are trying with so-called test migrations to reduce all the migration steps to 48 hours, very often even less, depending on how long you can avoid to be without the system. Very often it's a weekend, sometimes a long weekend. You have a bit more time available. But very often we also see that customers are constrained by their global manufacturing schedules. That means when in the one part of the world the sun goes down, in another part of the world the sun goes already up. Hence, also here you get squeezed, especially in global settings, quite a bit. And then having this target of reducing the timeline of all these migration steps to a weekend, that's basically the biggest challenge. And combined to that, or connected to that, is also the challenge how to estimate that, how to estimate the efforts, and hence also the budget of such a conversion, because it will depend how many migration cycles you will need, how many test migrations you actually need. And this is not that easy to predict. We advise not to go below 3 test migrations as an assumption. But I've also seen projects which had more than 20 test migrations before they actually dared to go in a go live migration over a weekend. Also here, important to note that the last test migration must already be flawless. You should not have a last test migration still with a lot of assumptions, what you all want to do during the weekend differently. No. It's really the last migration must be flawless according to the books with the expected timelines. Otherwise, I would rarely suggest to really go for it. So that's basically the biggest challenge in a brownfield.
Okay, good to know. Maybe to go also carefully a bit more technical, because I think that's also interesting for our listeners. What are some key technical prerequisites if you go to a brownfield migration?
So technical prerequisites are actually very little. So basically what needs to happen is you need to identify which kind of database you have, where you're coming from. Here we see some limitations when you have, for example, a Sybase or a MaxDB database, which is not as performant during the migration itself. So that you have just to take into account. But basically, everything runs around 2 different tools that you use. So let's take the assumption you are not on a SAP HANA database, because this can also happen that you run your ECC already on a HANA database. We used to call these systems Suite on HANA. But this is very rarely the case. So very often you run your old system either on Sybase or on an Oracle or on a Microsoft or a DB2 from IBM. So you come from these systems and you go to S/4HANA with the 2 tools. The one is the so-called DMO. DMO stands for Database Migration Options. This basically converts your database into the target HANA database. And then you have the so-called SUM Software Upgrade Manager, which basically brings your ECC, makes this technical upgrade from your ECC to an S4 system. If you mention that the technical prerequisites, of course, the technical servers have to comply with the requirements that this software upgrade manager is requesting. So it will check whether you have enough CPUs. It will check whether the CPUs are fast enough. All that are hard criteria. You can't skip them. Mm-hmm. So if you don't fulfill them, the SUM tool will simply stop. So this needs to be checked and can also be checked in advance whether your hardware is S/4HANA ready. And then actually, it's a kind of a journey that you take. It's a tool where you go step by step through this migration, which is also explaining to you what needs to happen next. Some of these steps take at the end during that weekend a couple hours, others are only a couple minutes. And that's basically how such a migration in a nutshell, in a brownfield migration actually is happening.
Nice. These tools are very interesting to hear again. Maybe also going forward, the future outlook to brownfield. How do you see it?
Yeah, so I think we will see more and more that companies and organizations, IT organizations for all, need to find really, really good arguments not to do a brownfield. So the scrutiny of that will be pretty high in organizations also, because if we look at the virtual graveyard of failed SAP S4 projects, we see predominantly, of course, greenfield projects. We will come later in another episode on that. For different reasons, greenfields are relatively risky. That pays off on other sides, but the risk is something you can try to manage. But still, the likelihood that you will fail with an S/4HANA greenfield is much higher statistically than with a brownfield. Brownfield is actually can be pretty well planned, with the exception of the number of migrations, as I mentioned before. So therefore, we will see, I think, a kind of an industrialization of brownfield. This will be more and more commodity. And also, if you are not requesting anything else than just this technical upgrade, this is something which can be in the meantime also done for a relatively affordable cost, and maybe also going a bit into the timeline. What are the typical timelines for a brownfield? Of course, it depends how much data you have in the system, how many inconsistencies you have in the system that you have to resolve. So a couple of, let's say, parameters need to be known, but we have seen brownfield conversions within 6 months with 3 test migrations included. But normally we see that brownfield from the beginning to the end will last something around 10 to 12 months, especially then if you have bigger systems which are also more complex than to test. Then it's not that easy to squeeze the time lower than that. So as a rule of thumb, think of something a bit below a year for doing such an S/4HANA brownfield migration.
Continue talking about the future. We know that AI is very present nowadays, and I think it will only go going forward. How does AI impact those decisions within those different approaches?
Well, they indirectly they influence them quite a lot, because of course companies that don't want to stay still for a long time just because of a move to S4. So as you mentioned, AI is a hot topic for so many companies, and they want to focus on these kinds of things, because AI will effectively mean you can be more efficient, you can use your people for other jobs in your organization, you can decrease aspects like certain parts in month-end closing activities, etc. So you find a lot of good ways to use AI and really make your organization more efficient. And of course, as long as you are busy with running your brownfield, then you can't tackle this one. So the move to AI and the attendance of AI also increases the temptation and the appetite for brownfields in order to get that as quickly as possible done and really focus on introducing AI on top of an S/4HANA system. So that's an indirect influence of the, let's say, the big trend towards AI and the big interest in AI. But of course, your question can be also interpreted a bit differently in a sense of how can AI tools help to move to S/4HANA. And there we see in the brownfield very little influence of that. So most of the things are tackled by the tools anyway. Yeah. Some things are not really possible to take up with AI. I mean, if we just remember what means AI, AI means you have the possibility to learn from a learning experience. You need to have a lot of data. And as I mentioned earlier, every company has an S4 system which is basically unique. So difficult then to learn, to actually apply learnings from that. So in the migration, in the brownfield migration itself, AI is usually of little help, maybe here and there to do the one or the other job. But grosso modo, AI doesn't play a big role during brownfields.
Would you say that choosing this brownfield approach that a customer stay agile and innovative for the future?
And this can be, because if you are just on an outdated software solution, SAP ECC, but which is really well documented, which is exactly still answering the needs of the business. Finance is happy, procurement is happy, sales is happy. And we have these customers still quite often. Then going on this, let's say, modern platform S4 is exactly bringing these possibilities to become agile, much more agile, to use a completely new user front end, all of a sudden also to use mobile devices. So all of that is in a brownfield perfectly enabled. The only thing that you cannot expect from a brownfield, and here we come back to best case is everything works as bad as before. If your old system wasn't agile yet in terms of allowing you, for example, to integrate quickly an acquired company or to carve out an sold part of the company, then going to S/4HANA will not change anything. No? So this is exactly the same thing, because usually the big roadblocks are complexities that have grown over the years in the legacy system. And with a brownfield migration, you just move that complexity on a new technical platform. So here, it really depends where you come from. If your system already allows that, then definitely we will have there no big improvement.
Okay. So we basically had what brownfield means. We also touched a little bit the technical side and the future outlook. I think we have a great episode. Do you want something to add, Torsten?
Yes. So basically, I'm just thinking about whether we missed anything in big. This allows you maybe to think aloud and just summarize it. So brownfield, definitely, you are not doing a lot of changes in the system. You will have basically the same data as before. Data cleansing is something which can happen as a pre-project to it. You will have the lowest timeline, the lowest resource on impact, the lowest impact on change in the organization. So from that perspective, I think it's quite well summarized. I hope everyone has quite a good understanding now of it. When thinking of brownfields, technical upgrades, we mentioned it in the previous session. I don't like the colors too much because a bit of green is in every brownfield. But no, I think we are good for today. Shall we call it an episode?
Yes, I think if there are still any questions, you can always contact us and we will happily answer them with our past experience as a guide.
Absolutely, Faisal. Thanks a lot for the questions.
Much appreciated again. And share, listen, and thumbs up, I would say.
Perfect.
Until the next episode.
Okay, let's give it a
Bye-bye.
bye.